Well, hello again, it's David Burt with another tutorial. This time we're going to be talking about the ninth chord, our first look at the extended harmony. Before we get into the ninth, it's understood that you know all about major sevenths and minor sevenths and diminished and augmented chords. And if you're not up to speed on that, please go to my website, www.davidburt.com, click on tutorials, and just review the forming and what those chords do, because they are what supports the nine. So without further ado, let's talk about the ninth chord. Well, the ninth is found on the ninth note of the scale. So if I were to take my trusty C scale, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But instead of counting up the whole scale, I guess we could come to the conclusion that the ninth is found a whole tone above its own root. A ninth must be supported. It doesn't stand alone. So it is usually supported with a 7, but there are other notes that it can be supported with. So here I'm playing a C7 chord with an added ninth. So what does a ninth do actually to the chord? Well, it doesn't change the quality, it just intensifies it, makes it bigger, better, if you will. So here's my C7 chord, a kind of a dominant chord, a kind of a very aggressive type chord. If I add a ninth, it just makes it even more so. I could also have a C major 9 chord. The major refers not to the chord, because in contemporary popular music everything's considered major unless you're told otherwise. And the major does not refer to the 9, because the 9 is a 9 is a 9. The major refers to the type of seventh being used, in this case a major seventh with an added 9. Again, the major 7 has that nice kind of easy going sound. If I add the 9, it just makes it even more so. The ninth can also be supported with a 6, a substitute for the major 7. In this case, the chord symbol would be called a C9 forward stroke 6 or a C add 6. They're both used. Sometimes even a C6 add 9 is used. They're totally interchangeable. The big bands of the 30s and the early 40s loved ending on that. They would do something like this. There's my ninth, supported by the 6 rather than the major 7 in this case. Minor sevenths are, of course, a very warm sounding chord. By adding the ninth to it, just makes it even more so. It's a great chord that was used in the song called Laura. Starts off on an A minor 9. There's my ninth, supported by the 7. This time I'm going to a G major 9. There's my 9, supported by its major 7. Moving to the 6. G minor 9, 7 supporting the 9. F major 9. F 9, 6. Major 7 moving to the 6. Notice that when I play a ninth, and I call it a ninth chord, the 7th, of course, is understood. So you want to make sure that even though the chord symbol doesn't say a 7, that it's in place. Now what if I want to play that chord in one hand? Obviously it's rather difficult to do that, so obviously something has to go. Which note would it be? Well, let's see now. If we look at the ninth chord, notice we don't play the root directly below its own ninth for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is that at one time this chord was considered very dissonant, and by qu'est-ce que c'est music law, it had to resolve to its own root. They used to call that, on a strong beat, a 9/8 appoggiatura. And believe me, if you didn't resolve it, well, they just took you out and shot you. But realistically, down the road, musicians just decided that they just kind of liked the ninth the way it was. But the root was always left open in case the ninth wanted to move in. Reason number 2, it just sounds bad, which is probably why any of these considerations are ever thought of. If I put the root directly below the 9, it breaks up the natural occurrence of the 9 being an extension of the 7. By the way, anywhere else is fine. I can play the root here, or down here, or up here. But getting back to if I wanted to play the chord in one hand, as I mentioned, not too practical. So which note's going to be dropped? Well, obviously it's going to be the root, because the only place I could play it would be directly below its 9, and we don't want to do that. So whether I play it in my left hand or my right hand, in this case I have the 9th on top. What inversion would this chord be in? Well, with no bass reference at all, it would be considered a first inversion, because the 3rd is at the bottom. If I were to take the 3rd and put it up here, it would be considered a second inversion, because the 5th is at the bottom. The last two, if I played it with the 7th below or the 9th, both of those chords are considered 3rd inversion. We don't have 4th inversion in chords. So by playing the chord by itself, there will be no root position, unless I put it down here. And of course that changes everything back into root position, because as you know, it goes to the lowest note that you hear is what determines the inversion. 9ths can also be flattened as well as sharpened. If I were to take my 9th here and flatten it, the chord symbol here would read C7 minus 9 or C7 flat 9. Both chord symbols are used. Notice in this case the 7th comes back into the chord symbol, and that's done for clarity. Flat 9s come from the 9th falling to the flat 9 and then moving on and resolving, in this case, a 5 to a 1 in the key of F. Here I'm using the 9th melodically as I go through the flat 9 and arrive. It could be buried in the chord. C9, C7 flat 9, and resolve onto my tonic chord, F major 9. As I mentioned, the 9th can be sharpened. So here I have a C9, there's my C flat 9, there's my sharp 9. And that looks rather interesting. It's used in jazz a lot. It has a very kind of jazzy type sound to it. In fact, in music circles, this is many times referred to as the Gershwin 9th, mainly because George Gershwin loved the sharp 9. In fact, he liked the flat 9 and the sharp 9. He didn't care so much for the 9th, but he used to play between the sharp 9 and the flat 9. He'd do something like sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 9, resolve. Chord symbol for that, 3 of them to be exact. We have C7 plus 9, C7 sharp 9, C7 augmented 9. What if I wanted to use a 9th, but not have an extension of anything? Just basically the triad. Back in the old days, they would say this is a C9 chord, and then in brackets, no 7. We have a better way of depicting that. We just call it a C2 chord. So there's my C with the 2nd note of the scale. Well, we know it's a 9, but we call it a 2. So if it's called a 2, it means it's not supported with a 7, a major 7, or the substitute, the 6. It's a standalone. Very seldom voiced this way. It's usually voiced when I take the triad and I put it over top of its 9th. Now, of course, I'm breaking my own rule. Don't play the root directly below its 9th. So I won't. I'll take that away. I can play the root down here. And songwriters have had a great deal of fun with this chord. C2 or C add 2, C chord, C2 or C add 2. What about the minor form? Could we do it with a C minor? Well, certainly. And of course then you get the song The Young and the Restless. They started on a C minor 2 chord, went to a C minor chord, C minor 2, B flat 2, to its B flat, to an A flat 2, to an A flat chord, A flat 2, and to a G minor 2, G minor, G minor 2, G minor. 2 chords can also be used in an area where it'd be too rough to use a major 7th. For example, if I wanted to play an F major 9 chord with C as my melody, a little rough there with the major 7, so I could just simply change that. Instead of saying an F major 9 chord, just call it an F2 chord, get rid of the major 7, sounds a little more palatable. So that is kind of used to get into the lower areas of the piano so that you're not just stuck with a triad sound, which is rather staid. This kind of has a nice ring to it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial on the 9th chord, and have a great day, and thanks for joining me. Bye bye for now.